waste time on that at the moment. Just to let you know, you're seeing the live product at the moment. So I'm just accessing it through my Internet Explorer, but it doesn't really matter what browser you're accessing it through. So just to kind of start off, before we show you how the system works, how the system creates the data classification and SDS, I'll just mention that with Chemwatch you can control every stage of your SDS authoring process. So in our user setup, we do have individual permissions for each of these stages and tabs here. So you can assign users to do data entry and then have another user, an expert, actually sign off and publish the SDS. But we've really designed the software with the aim that any user from around the globe, you can see we've got 47 different UI options here, can offer an MSDS with really no kind of qualifications in terms of regulatory understanding. As I said, the system can offer an SDS from the minimum data of just the composition of the chemical. So I'm going to go through the process of creating a document on the system and show you how easy it is. So I'm just going to put in a name here for the webinar product, let's say 4, and we'll give it the catalog number, we'll just call it WP4. And then you've got various other things that you can enter, mainly for pure products. So for the CAS number, you can create the SDS of a pure product just by putting in the CAS number. And you would have to put in the REACH registration number, your own one for that pure material. But none of that's required. Again, the uses is a free text box, but it's not required. For the European market, we have extracted all the REACH uses. So you don't have to type anything here. It's just a case of selecting the categories that you want. So let's say industrial use, and for this particular product, we will say it's a water treatment chemical, for example. And we can save that in, and that will come into the system and be able to be translated into the different languages. Similarly with manufacturing details, you can set it up to always show your manufacturing details, so this step is kind of optional. But as I said, if you are a company where you do have different addresses from different parts of the world, that can all be set up in the options to be automatically reported. Or you can just type them in here or select the name of your company and have them automatically filled. But again, that's not required to be able to create the document at a minimum. So what we do require is only at least one ingredient, but I'm going to put in a number of ingredients here. And you can input in kind of 3 different ways. So one is just typing the name of the material, so something really simple here like water. And then it's going to search our database, putting out water at the top, and then obviously anything else coming down with water in the product name. So I can select that, and I'll put my proportion in here, 95%. The second way is you can put the CAS number in. So if I'm just going to start typing a CAS number here, and again it's going to search our database and find either the exact match or give the options with that CAS number. Maybe there's different names for the material or kind of different substances within that category. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to put an exact percentage in here. So you can have more than or less than, you can have fixed percentages or molar values, or you can have ranges. So I'm going to start typing in a couple more ingredients here. Just to show you, there's no real limit to the amount of ingredients that you can have. The UI just shows 3 at the start just for easiness, really. But as I type in my each ingredient here, it's just going to give us the next slot to type in our ingredient. And as I said, you could go up to hundreds of ingredients. As I said, I've I don't think we've tested with thousands, but there's nothing in the software that would prevent you from doing that. So again, I'm just going to type in some kind of, we'll do a range for this one. So we'll do 0.01 to 0.05. And for this one, we will put in 1.9, for example. The only real restriction here is you can't have a hard calculation that goes above 100. But otherwise, we can cope with kind of ranges, more than or less than, fixed values, etc. We're going to have the state here as liquid. But you can see here we've got gases, compressed gases, divided solid, which is your dusts, powders, etc., your solids, your pastes. But I'm going to put in liquid here, just for simplicity sake, and we'll put in that it's miscible with water. All our other values, so things like pH, flash point, etc., all of them can be entered, and they do have an effect on the calculation. Things like appearance, odor, taste, for example, if it's a food product. Some of those will be able to be inputted but won't have an effect on the calculation. But again, none of that's required. So I can calculate our SDS juice from these values themselves. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to hit submit, and I'm going to create my document. We've got a couple more stages that I'll kind of go over before I kind of start going through what the actual system's doing when it's running this calculation, and loading up this document here on the right-hand side. But our next tab is review ingredients. So we do have the option to review ingredients, so we can edit primarily the classification of each substance. So as I said, this is pulling from our particular chemical database, but you can go ahead and edit the particular classification of the ingredient. But the most important thing here that our kind of users use is we do have a sanitized view. So we have an automatic sanitized view, which will hide any non-hazardous materials or any materials that aren't contributing to the classification. So things that we're legally allowed to hide. What we can also do is, you can see here I put in a fixed proportion, and that is what the system is going to run all the calculations from. But if we don't want to show our customer that, we can put in a range, for example. We can change the name. And that is what the customer, that's what's going to show in the document. But obviously the calculation is going to come from the value that you inputted at the start. So there's our review ingredients. This is our final calculated classification. But if you do have permission, if you've set up a user with permission or yourselves, you can edit the classification, so you do have complete control. Obviously, this is the one that the system calculates from the rules. But obviously, if you've done testing, for example, if you've got other evidence to disagree with the calculated classification, you can potentially change and add to that. Again, the system will record it, run the rules, but none of the kind of documents will see what you've added and what you've changed. It will all just show as the classification down here on the SDS. I'll kind of come back to dangerous goods and the toxic irritation section after we've kind of gone over the document here. So you'll see that I just clicked that button. I just entered some ingredients at the top here. That's all I had to do. And the system has created and shown me the document. It's shown me the US document in English. But the whole document is calculated and created. So you've got your classification here. From that, you've got your precautionary statements, ingredients, all your text sections, so first aid, firefighting. Again, all of that is populated by our rule set. Going down, when we get to our exposure limits, this is drawn from our live database, depending on the country. So the system, as I said, this is a live document, so each time that we have a look at it, it's always going to request those values from the databases every time that you look at this document. So these are all the data on the document is live linked. We can also give very detailed PPE recommendations. We even go so far as to give recommendations on the type of PPE, the type of material for gloves. Again, listing them in the most appropriate best selection to a poor selection. In terms of respirator, again, we can calculate both the respirator used at the exposure standard and if someone is going to use the chemical and environment where they are above the exposure standard, what type of class of respirator would be appropriate in that case. Again, going down, all these sections under section 11 are automatically populated. So detailed tox information, and again, live tox values taken from our database. Again, going down, we've got quite a lot of information. The system has a setting called sentence count. So I've got it set to full for the purpose of this demo. But you can automatically control how long your documents are going to be, depending on your clients and the audience of that document. So I've set it to full just so you can see the maximum information, but we can shorten and reduce this information. And at the end of the day, we can edit every section of the document itself. So you do have kind of complete control at the end of the day. But we just want to show you that the whole document is populated. There's nothing that you have to input to be able to create these sections, these data links, going right down to the ecotox information, environmental information, limits, waste disposal, regulatory links. Again, it's pulled live from our database depending on the country. And also any local requirements. So you can see here under section 15, we've got our SAR information. Again, that's automatically calculated by the rules of the system. But the great thing about Chemwatch, and it's kind of really unique, is that not only have we created this one potential PDF Word document by running that rule set, we've created kind of 47 different documents, as well as their appropriate languages. So first of all, if I want this document in Spanish, for example, that's already there, that's already sitting on the system. All the system does is contact our phrase database for Spanish and start pulling those phrases into the documents. So it's all pre-translated by professional translators who have experience either in the EHS or chemical industry. And that's all sitting in there in our database, and all the system has to do is pull it from there. So you can see this is Spanish, a fairly simple language in terms of kind of IT structure. But if we go down to something more complicated, so China. But what I want to highlight before that is you can see here we have 4 H codes. So it's classified this particular material with those 4 H codes. But I chose this kind of particular composition because when I go to China, you're going to see that the classification has changed. Because the system doesn't only run one rule set to classify the chemical. It runs each individual country rule set. So there's around 10 in there. So we've got US GHS, Canadian GHS, Chinese, Korean, Japan, Australian, New Zealand, different versions of GHS, European CLP, and then all versions of the Purple Book rule set that again are used in and assigned to each individual country. So you can see not only is this document in Chinese, we'll switch it back to English so it's actually readable to the majority of people here, but it's also classifying the material differently because it's using a different rule set. So the person using this software doesn't need to have any detailed knowledge of global regulations because the system is actually doing it all for you. So it's running each one of those individual rule sets and populating the document based on that. You'll also see differences of the document depending on the country. So you can see the ingredient section looks different for the Chinese document because we're required to show the classification of each ingredient there, and we weren't in the US. If I go down to exposure, you can see that's changed. We've got less exposure limits in this case because it's only going to be looking at Chinese exposure limits. Again, going down to regulations, we don't have any of the US or US state regulations here. We've just got Chinese. And you don't see any of that SARA information here. So Chemwatch's team of chemists and regulatory professionals work hard and constantly to make sure these different documents are up to date. So you're going to notice difference in not only kind of Chinese, American, European, but even within those rule sets. So local rule sets for Germany, for example, they have their own water WKG information that needs to be pulled into section 15. So not only does the rule set change, but any local requirements in terms of the document format, languages, will change automatically. So again, you don't have to have any knowledge of that. You're kind of rest assured that kind of Chemwatch's team is monitoring that information because, as Paul and Tom said, we do use this ourselves, and our business is based on using this to write SDSs for our clients. So it's in our interest to ensure that this system is working, our software is working, our templates are up to date. So we're not just giving you a product that we know isn't going to work. We're actually using this product ourselves and need to make sure that everything is up to date constantly and in all those different areas.
You know what always...
For the UK, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, you know, Paul, what always amazes me is that you didn't really put that much information into the system in the left-hand panel, and yet you're able to generate all these, you know, documents in multiple languages, multiple countries. And that always fascinates me with our product is how little work is required. You can almost have a admin do some of the work for your team, and then, you know, have you just review it, make sure it's right. I mean, it just seems too easy, but it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what our clients do. Because as I said, all this is controlled by permissions. So we have a lot of clients who will just give an admin access to this particular form to fill in. So they'll just put the name and the kind of information in here and submit it. It will save as a draft here, so section or version 1.1. But as soon as I change something, like I change that review ingredients, or if I now want to start looking up and try and calculate my dangerous goods information. So we'll see if the system is going to recommend us any dangerous goods information here. So we can update that there. So now this is going to create version 0.2. And all the versions are saved on the system. These are all draft versions. So it's just going to be located in this particular module if it is linked to a wider section. Or if it is just going to show as a draft version until we actually publish it. So it's not recommending us any dangerous goods class. So we're not going to have any dangerous goods information there. I might put one in that's not appropriate just to show the data there. But obviously what we did update is we did update the kind of proportions here. So you can see here, yeah, there we go, for our material here. Instead of showing 0.9, which is what we're running our calculation on, we're actually showing the 0.5 to 1 there. So obviously we don't want our client or our consumer to actually see our exact amount, but we want the calculations to run on the exact amount.
How many calculations does the system do when it's, you know, taking these chemicals and mixing them together and then producing the information?
I mean, there's over kind of 100,000 different rules.
Wow.
As I said, each kind of data point on the system has its own rule set. So if you just take, for example, one data point, which would be, say, the flammability rating on your NFPA diamond, I mean, that looks at both ingredients. It looks mainly at flash point, boiling point, and the overall classification. And as I said, there's just for that data point alone, there's kind of around 20 different lines in that rule set to see which kind of calculations take priority, whether it's the boiling point, flash point, or if it doesn't have them, it will use the actual classification of the overall material.
That's
And
amazing.
each one of those different scenarios, obviously the text sections are a lot more complicated. They'll mainly look at the ingredients and the classification, and they'll look at different data points within those ingredients. So the way it kind of works in the back end is we have a very complex procedure about how we manage and review the pure substances, but it enables us to assign them to different groups, etc. So when a new novel substance comes in, it means that we can enter that data very easily, and it comes seamlessly into the system, available for you to pick out and link to all those different regulatory lists.
That's what I think is so amazing, is that all that stuff is there for you. You just key it in the system. I mean, we don't have it every time, but 95% of the time we have that pure. So
yeah, I mean, it's unlikely to find pures that are kind of in use anywhere that we don't have. We've done various exercises like parsing the combined CNL inventory, so everything that's registered in Europe. Obviously, anything that's on any regulation anywhere will be kind of on the system. But we made a point very early on to kind of work with a lot of the universities, state laboratories. I'm sure you and Tom can give some examples. We have a lot of clients there, and they kind of help us with populating the database, asking for new materials. And because we have to service them, it means that we build up a very large database of pure materials available for the system to use.
Because I mean, we're getting a lot of requests for people that want to do labels, and Paul will show you in a second that the same classification engine that you're using here will be used to make a label. So as easy as it was, say I have a user that says I need to create a label because in the past we didn't have to, but now we do, and we mix these things together, and then the employees do something with it. So now we need that label. But you don't need a chemist on staff to do that, because it's just like, Paul's getting ready to show you. I don't want to steal his thunder, but labels are a big deal, and I think you'll see how easy we can, have, literally anybody could use the system to create those labels. So I'll pipe down, let you finish, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I wanted to show just before that is, let me just load up our particular report here. So we don't hide away from anything that the system's doing. So you can see here, I can actually review exactly how the system has created that classification. Obviously, you get a different report for each country, depending on the rule set. So I can actually go down and see what is contributing to my classifications. So you can see overall classification here. We've got our kind of skid irritant classification, and it's a cutoff calculation, so it has to be above one combination of materials. And you can see each one of our ingredients is kind of contributing to that cutoff. So if I removed one, it wouldn't change that one. And again, you can see here, to be able to reduce this to make it not a sensitizer, I'd have to reduce the concentration of this particular ingredient below 0.01. So again, you can load this report up in the different countries and see if we want to make our product safer, if it's possible, if we can change the composition to avoid certain classifications, or to make the product safer to meet certain customer requirements, for example, in development. None of that information is hidden to you. It's all available from our reports on our actual rule set. So as Paul mentioned, the way the system works is it generates the data in the database and then throws that data into the different documents. So this also allows us to create labels from the system. So you don't need to create a label for each product. What you can do is you can create a template and then use that template for each product. So if I load up a template here, what the system is doing is it's just throwing all that data into that template there and automatically creating that label. So it's a very simple kind of two-click solution to kind of print out a label. Again, I can batch print labels like that by hitting the save and doing batches of SDS labels here. but what you have with our label builder, the system comes with around, I'm trying to think of the number here, it's around 50 kind of pre-built labels in the system. So you can choose any one of those, but you can also edit those labels and create your own. So if I just wanted to grab that label that we loaded up just a second ago, there we go. So if I wanted to change anything about this label, it's very simple. I can preview that label while I'm changing it, so I know exactly how it's going to look. So for example, you can see this section here. Maybe I wanted to remove the supplementary statements because we don't need them. And say we wanted to have the classification here. Maybe we wanted it in a different language. What we can do is we can just copy that data point and edit that. We'll have that in traditional Chinese. And you can see I've changed the language of that. And again, I can save the template back, and any user can use this template. Fundamentally, anything that's on the SDS can be pulled into the label automatically, as well as various kind of custom data points or data points that you want to input at time of print, like barcodes, a batch number, for example. But it's very simple. You're just picking the data points here. So if I wanted some information about, let's say, what gloves, just a short statement about what gloves we're going to be using. So we can go ahead and we can pull that in and just rearrange it. And there's various rules here that will make sure that text doesn't flow over the boxes. Make sure that you can have multiple kind of languages, etc. So it's a very kind of mature tool and very flexible to what you need to do.
It's kind of like PowerPoint on steroids. You know, you're kind of ranging things, and then basically we're pumping the data in that comes out of our classification engine, like we're doing SDS, but we're not. It's just we're just taking what we need. So.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for our reporting tools, kind of with the full system, because each data point is granulated. Kind of spreadsheets can be pulled off of, for instance, like material name classification, PPE, for example. If you wanted to power like another system for like a client information system, or you wanted to push some data into a report for your people writing a technical data sheet in terms of like boiling point, physical properties, for example. So all the data is managed in a kind of very database way, I suppose. It's all granulated. You're not just producing PDFs, you're producing data that's filling those PDFs. So really any format we can produce that data in.
And we of course can, once you bless a template, you can put that out for your users, and your users, when we take the permissions, we can dummy the system down so the user may only see the 5 labels that are approved, and they only see your chemicals that they're allowed to generate labels with. So the administrator can do all the things that Paul's doing, but yet the user can be very constrained.
Yeah. So everything is controllable by a permission. So there's separate permissions to access this, to save this, and so there's various, or to print a label or to see a label. Each one has its own kind of distinct permission, as well as users logging in as their local language, local format. Everything kind of has a permission here on the system.
Yeah, so a basic user screen would be very simple, but the administrator, like Paul is showing, and if you just want the label creation piece of our solution, even though we can create an SDS, we basically are allowing you to use our classification engine and just to create labels. So you get the power of being able to put your materials in and having the system generate the labels, GHS compliant, whatever. And then you don't need an SDS. Well, we don't have that included. So that's really nice. We're able to separate those two for you.
We even have tools to import data into the system. So see, I've got some data on a product here. I can actually import that and instantly create an SDS or multiple SDS. So fundamentally, I could kind of create hundreds of SDSs at the click of the button by importing data from a spreadsheet. So it's very easy to get your kind of whole inventory of materials into the system and creating all the kind of different language version SDSs. Because obviously we did have clients that had a large number. So there we go. This is import one. So you can see I've basically instantly created an SDS by just importing data from this spreadsheet that just contains CAS numbers, percentages, and a name and a product code.
Every time I see the demonstration of this product, it just blows me away at how easy it is, because our database is so vast, and it runs all the calculations, and it just does the heavy lifting for you. It's almost too easy to be possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much time we have left, Paul.
I was going to say,
questions. Or...
Yeah, we need to. I just get so enamored with the product. I'm sorry, everybody. Every time Paul starts showing it, I'm just like, wow, that thing is just too cool. So, but you're absolutely right. Thank you for minding the clock. So if you don't mind, if you see the chat session down there, if you want to have a question answered by Paul or something he can show you, and we'll just kind of take them there. So just enter something in the chat window, and we'll answer your question live. And like I said, we got 10-12 minutes left. So please submit a question and kind of see where that goes.
One capability of our system that we'd like to talk about is we have some customers who are paint manufacturers, and they have very complex substances, 25, 30 ingredients. But a number of the products have, let's say, a base chemical a base chemical family, we'll say, of maybe 5 or 6 substances. And what we can do is allow you to create a we'll call an SDS representing that family, and then you can then populate the left-hand panel here with that substances. So you can create SDSs very quickly. I have a client who creates about 3,000 to 5,000 a year for just 4 suppliers, and one of them has about 12 different components around potassium. So she can copy this, or sorry, she can create derivatives of that SDS very quickly, and that's one reason she went to our system.
Yeah. You can see here I've the 3 examples that I created today. So import material example, 0, etc. What you can do is you can type them in, and then if I go to review ingredients, it basically breaks them down and adds them up, and then obviously the calculations will run on that. So just for this one, all of those imports are the same material actually, so it doesn't look very fancy, but you can see it's doing all the additions for you. If I put in this new paint product, put in that one, new paint. So these are all materials that I've already created, that we don't have to re-enter any ingredients for. It's going to do the calculations, so timesing the pure substances by the proportions, then adding them back up again if needed. And then it's very easy, just hit submit that and just give it a name, product number, and you create your SDS very, very quickly.
And you can go right to a label if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
I did have a question that somebody asked if they could get a trial of our system, and we're happy to provide you with a trial of the system. Just contact Tom or myself, and we'll set you up a trial, and you can take it for a drive. And it's literally as easy as Paul's demonstrating to take the thing and to use it. And the data behind it, I think, is truly the calculations are also powerful because we correctly classify. And we've had people look at our product and looked at other products that work similar. And they said, well, those other products, even though they look like they would work, they didn't correctly classify our products where yours does. So not only do we have the best classification engine, but we have the richest database. So you're going to find the materials that you're using, and then we're going to correctly classify it. Like I said, most of the time, I can't say all, every chemical, we're going to do it right every time, but 95% of the time we're going to hit it. So
that's a very good. Sorry, Paul, I just want to build on your point. That customer Paul just referred to actually had an independent set of independent chemists look at our classification schema against a global competitor, and it was proven that theirs were incorrect. And it was a problem for our customer because they were creating SDSs for their customers, and their customers came back and said the data is bad. So we've been, let's say, validated by independent chemists. And also, just to build on Paul's point on substances, I believe our database accesses 150,000 base substances for you to build your SDSs upon.
So here we have another question. Do you also have generic SDSs, or is all your cloud data vendor specific? You want to grab that one, Paul?
No. So we do have generic SDSs. The main database is for substances. So you actually saw a couple of minutes ago when I clicked on one of those hyperlinks in the ingredients, it loaded up the generic MSDS for that particular material. So for each substance in the database, there is a generic SDS for that pure. There are a number of kind of generic SDSs for generic products in the database as well. But obviously, that's depending on our kind of client management system. That kind of more revolves around that. The other thing that you can do is you can vendor data. I don't have access to chat here, Paul. Can you help me out here?
Sorry about that. What are you looking to chat?
I think there's a message that just came through, a clarification from that question that I didn't.
Yeah, it says, do you have generic SDSs, or is all of your cloud data vendor specific? So, but yeah, the answer is yes, because we have the gold SDSs, you know, so we we have tons and tons. And like we mentioned at the earlier presentation, a lot of pharmaceutical companies, as Paul mentioned, he used to work for a pharmaceutical company. They like our SDSs because they may get, you know, chemicals from two different manufacturers in China, have two different SDSs, and they want one document, or, you know, one rule that this is the document of record. And Paul can speak to that better than myself. Would you want to just run past that one real quick, Paul? Why they like our gold SDSs?
Yeah, so as I said, the data is generic. So it's Chemwatch data. So where there is official data, we'll pull from the official source for the country. And you'll see on the SDS, if I go back to it, you'll see that there's a reference where the actual classification data is coming from. But ultimately, all our database is maintained by us. So none of it is really vendor specific in terms of substance classification, if that's what you mean. So we manage the database either from official sources, or where there's a lack of an official source, we'll have our own classification for that particular substance, and obviously we'll stand behind that kind of on the legal front.
Yep. And I guess I had one more question. You probably can just talk through this one. I had a question. What happens if a field overflows, or we need to go to like a multiple page label, like some of them you see that'll fan out? You know, what do we do if there's, you know, it works on one label, but then the next label there's too much information?
So there's kind of two options. There is one, we have sentence count logic. So if you need a label to fit a specific size, obviously we can do that with our sentence count logic. So it can either be set up to, if you fix the font size, it will use the sentence count logic to not overflow. So each statement on the document is ordered in priority. So you see here for first aid, for example, the top statements are the most important, and then going down it will give you more information. So it will start to cut off the bottom sentences. If you need a label that is designed to run over 2 pages, it's just a case of when you go into the label generator, you tell something that it's a report instead of a label, and then it will start. So you can see your label of document. So documents are the ones that can run over 2 pages if you require them to. I'm not sure I have any examples. Oh, there we go.
Well, another nice thing is
can run over to 2 pages.
Another nice thing is we don't just chop off a sentence halfway through, because our system would look at that and say, well, I can't fit it on, or I can change the font size a little bit. And that to me is very powerful, because you don't want it like half a sentence on your label. Yeah, we're getting a lot of interest in labels, so I'm sure it's a big concern. So anybody else have any questions? So yeah, there's yeah, that's awesome.
We can customize the document format. Oh, sorry, Paul. I just want to say to our customers, our audience, our customers can also have us customize the SDS format. We have a customer in North America that requires what they call a vanilla format without a lot of the language included, and we created that for them and showed them obviously how they could do their own by importing a format that they've created from their C drive. So you have a lot of flexibility on the data format of the SDS.
Yeah. And we can do barcodes, QR codes, things like that. We've got a new module we just released, scan in, scan out. So all that stuff, if you need that on your labels, obviously some of the RFID stuff is becoming very popular. We're going to have that incorporated in our product as well. So there's almost nothing we can't do with a label. I guess that's not very good English, is it? We can do anything with labels there. Anyway, but Paul, go ahead and explain what you're doing now. It's
yeah, I was just showing you the sentence count.
Okay.
So you can assign a sentence count if you want to ensure that statements aren't kind of overflowing. So you can have default, which will cut it off, obviously depending on how much it's being filled, but you can have a
look at that.
sentence count for.
And it was smart enough to stop it at the period.
Line.
Yeah. Well, that is just too impressive.
So we can see that would never, because it's 1 per line, sentence count 4, that's never going to go over that box, for example.
Because then when I put in different chemicals and they have different things, it's smart enough to know, well, I don't do this or I don't do that. That's, yeah. So you create the
same
template.
With the different pictograms. You can either assign different pictograms to their own data point, or you can have the pictograms all in kind of one data point here.
And if a pictogram is not required, it's suppressed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just fascinated with this.
Paul, when you restrict, I have a question here. When you restrict sentence count, does that then list the sentences by priority?
Yes. They're
so
all,
you say
everything's already listed by priority. So that's in the design. So it will cut off from the bottom, but all the statements, all the paragraphs are written in terms of priority at the top, and then going down into more detail at the bottom.
It's just an amazing product. But anyway, well, listen, we're exactly at our hour cutoff. So if anyone, we appreciate your joining us today, and we're all going to sit around for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, please submit them with the chat box, and I will continue to be amazed at our product as Paul is running it. But anyway, we really appreciate you joining us today. And I'm Paul.Benbow at Chemwatch.net and Tom-Hassey at Chemwatch.net. Please reach out to us. We'll send you a link with the video recording so you can share it with your coworkers, peers, what have you. Look for that. Probably be later today or tomorrow. But we really appreciate you joining us today. And like I said, we're going to be hanging out. Please chat a question in, and we thank you for joining us today.
I think there was one more question there.
Oh. Let me look real quick.
The one.
Okay, yeah, I've managed to access chat now, so sorry about that. So yes, you can include a lot number into a QR barcode. So if I wanted to do that, as I said, we've got a number of options for different type of barcodes. So you've got like a QR code, or you've got the more simple kind of the original barcodes there. But what you want to do is you can either have it run off part number. So when you're putting in that part number, you can have that automatically fill the QR code. If it's a number like a batch code, we can have it input at time of print. So if I try and print this label with any data that's input at time of print, I'll get a pop-up to bring that up. So if I just save this in, save as a new label, and if I go and try and fill this in, it's going to ask me to input that particular code to fill in that barcode when we print the label. So we'll do label.
Yeah, I'm glad you saw that question, because that's a good one, and I like showing our ability to do this feature. So good of you to catch that.
I think this is the one. That's not the one. I call too many of these labels new labels.
I do the same thing. New label 1.
Yeah, maybe it's this one.
New label Fred, you know.
That's not that one either. Try. Must be on page 1 here. Don't think it's that one.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was either, so
No.
I can't do anything for you on this one.
Anyway, that's the way it works. If there's a field that's input at time of print, it's going to ask you to do that. Or you can get it to run off a field that's already in the system. Kind of for more complicated things, you can create your own fields. So you can create your own forms. I don't have access. I'll go to my high user. But basically, you can create your own form fields to input, kind of, say you had 10 numerical references that needed to come onto a label. You can create a form for that and have that power a label. So let me just come in here.
But yeah, I think it's also nice to kind of show, you know, our different levels of users. You know, so you could have just somebody that's a shop floor user, or somebody who's just create labels. They can have the dummy down system, or like you're doing, you know, you have all the administrative tools because you're coming in at the highest level.
Yeah, so if I just create a numbers form, we'll add some, it's just going to be free text, single line text. Okay, this is batch number, and then we wanted, create that. And then again, you can add as many data points, and basically each one of these data points I can use in my label. So again, they can be drop-down lists, etc. So single line.
We had a total rewrite of our label system, what, a year ago or something like that?
Yeah.
And it's really powerful. I mean, the guys did a bang-up job on that thing. They really did. So.
Yeah, it can be, you've either got the form option, so someone pre-filling in the data next to a form, or you've got the option to, what do I call this? Or you've got the option to have input at time of print. So you can actually put in data points that when you activate it, it asks the user to fill it in. Or again, you can use the system based on a kind of part number, barcode, etc. Let's try this one.
Call it something different this time.
Yeah. Type some random letters in. There we go.
I'll help you remember this time.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're accessing it kind of from the home module, you can search, so it just makes it a bit easier. So I can pull, there we go. So there was one already on that label, it seems. Obviously in this case, I just type some random numbers in there, random numbers in here. Obviously I think emergency numbers is just a text field, so that's going to copy that in there. And then this one will actually generate the barcode based on that number in Italian, because
Of course.
I've got this folder set up to be.
I was hoping you had Italian because, you know, I'm a little...
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, you even have
This
that
label is
Italian
fairly
in there,
messy, but hopefully you get the idea.
only in the demo, but yeah, it's definitely doable and possible. So no, that's I think you hit that one out of the park, because we can definitely do that. And I mean, everybody likes barcodes, QR codes, RFID, all that stuff's, you know, fast and furious. So, but anyway, well, hey Tom, do you have any closing thoughts before we put this one to bed?
Yeah, we access 150,000 chemicals. We do it in 100 country formats and 47 languages. It's as complete an authoring tool that's out in the market.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So, and Mr. Paul Hollingsdale, do you have any thoughts before we wind this thing up?
Just thank you to everyone who attended.
Yeah, we really appreciate your staying a few extra minutes and watching Paul play the Stradivarius for us. But anyway, but yeah, catch up with either Tom or myself, and we're happy to give you a trial or get you started, and talk to you about the products and see how we can help you do your job better. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.